Welcome everybody to the Synapse Philosophy Group. I'm your host, Dr. Haig John, and we are here with Bob and Carol Crystal and Alan Lichter, and we have people coming in. They'll come in today, and we've been reviewing D.D. Palmer's 1914 book, The Chiropractor, and it's just a wealth of information. It's just such amazing things to really get the heart and the soul out of D.D., and his writing, I think, is excellent. And so we're on page 22. It's called A Brief Review. So I'm going to read a little bit, and then Alan, I'm going to hand off to you. Is that cool?
Absolutely. I'm excited for this chapter. It is an awesome chapter.
I mean, it's like an amazing four pages. I think that's about
like
what
3.5 pages, and it is just all meat.
Yeah, it's all meat. So, and just
or all vegetables for those who don't want to eat the meat.
There you go. And I had a beautiful vegetarian food at a Mexican restaurant tonight. So, and today I'm just going to mark this down in history. This is the week I have a broken fibula. And it's such a joy to know that my spirit is on the job healing. Okay. So a brief review, page 22. Biology is the science of life. Life is intelligent action. Movements guided by intelligence. Life exists because renancy and elasticity of tissue. These conditions not only make it possible to receive, but actually create a response to an impulse. Impulses are thoughts in transmission over the nervous system. In telepathy, thoughts are transmitted by the vibration of ether. In spoken language, they are transferred by vibrations of the air. Okay, thanks, Dee. The soul is intelligent.
Well, I think we ought to talk about that for just a second.
All right, go ahead.
That biology is the science of life. Life is intelligent action, movements guided by intelligence. The movement doesn't happen randomly. Mm-hmm. Movement in life is moved because of intelligence. Life exists because of renancy and elasticity of tissue. That's tension and relaxation. These conditions not only permit but make it possible to receive, but actually create the response to an impulse. Yeah. And he says there, impulses are thoughts in transmission over nerve tissue and the nervous system. So intelligence makes things move, and impulses are transmitted on nerves to allow that to happen.
And just going back to our history and green books, we're reading the 33 principles here, right? This is where Stevenson, I don't care.
Three principles, yeah. This is where they came from.
Exactly. And I've had people argue that's that point, actually, because they've probably never read this. And what he did, he extrapolated from it, made it a little bit easier to understand, maybe. But in the 1920s, when Stevenson was writing that, this was a very obscure book. It was, hey, good job, son. Hey there. Malcolm, come say hi. All right, good night, son.
Good night.
So, our history is vast and it's beautiful. So, and so are our children and the chiropractic kids coming up in this world. And you have your baby about to graduate from chiropractic school. She's not far from there. I mean, wonderful. I got to see her in Sherman last time I was there. Awesome chiropractors coming up. I'm so proud of her. All right. The soul is intelligent life. It is the product of uniting intelligence and material, spirit and body, the result of a combination of the immaterial with the material. Vital makes possible organ functions. Read that again. Vital makes possible organic functions, the power of motion and feeling. Why do you think he used vital all by itself like that? It's capitalized. I don't think that was a mistake.
Different use of the terminology might have been, an antiquated use of the term.
It might be, but that's interesting. While you're looking that up, I'm just going to read the next one. The amount of tension depends on the relative position of the osseous frame, the neuroskeleton, the skeleton of the vertebrata. Okay, the vertebrates, excuse me. All right. Did you get anything out? Did you look it up, Alan?
Nothing. There's not anything showing up in the normal dictionary. So,
well, we'll go back to that if we come to it, because that was a little odd. Health is a condition.
But the thing about, the soul is intelligent life, the product of uniting intelligence and matter, spirit and body. It's the same thing. He's driving this point home.
Yeah.
Result of the combination of the result of a combination of the immaterial and the material, spirit and body. Immaterial and spirit and body are separate, but they're united, and that's what allows it to happen. Vital, I guess that's where it comes from, but I'm still not clear, makes possible organic functions. So spirit makes the organic functions possible.
It's the root word of vitalistic and all those things, so we should know our root. And, we've spent, quite a bit of time at Self-Center with Pasquale and really talking about the difference of spirit and innate and the soul. And here he's talking about the soul is intelligent life. He's making it very specific. It is the product from uniting intelligence and material. He's talking about, the soul is an outcome of spirit and body becoming one. That's really, really interesting. I don't know where we'll go with that, but that's something to make note of. All right.
I've got something now in Vital.
Go ahead. It
says from the late 14th century, of or manifesting life, from Latin vitalis, of or beginning to life, or longing to life, sorry, from vital, vita, which is the word Latin for life, related to vivere, to live, from pi root, that goes on to something else. The sense of necessary or important is from the 1610s via the notion of essential to life from the 15th century. So that's vital capacity recorded from 1852. So that became later on. So that's all I got.
Well, and that's, I think, really why he makes a distinction very often about vital forces in the body, that a mental impulse is what BJ used, and he didn't like it because a mental impulse is move my arm, and I'm moving my arm intellectually. A vital force, your heart is pumping, you're digesting, all the things that innate is doing are vital forces. That's what I think that's probably why he uses that distinctly by itself, because it is such an important distinction. Okay, should I read the next one?
Yeah.
Health is a condition where all the functions are performed with a normal amount of force. Disease is an existence in which the action of an organ or organs are improperly performed. Death is a situation wherein action has ceased. Is it ceased? Yes. To be controlled by intelligence. I'm going to read that again. Death is a situation wherein action has ceased to be controlled by intelligence. Mine was underlined multiple times in here. The state of disillusion, or the act of a rolling stone, is not that of intelligence. Inflammation is a condition in which some local portion exhibits a higher temperature than the other, including the blood. Do not forget, in order to disturb functions, there must be inordinate nerve tension, also a change in heat production. Fever is a state in which the whole body is above normal in temperature. Fever is diffused. Diffused inflammation. Inflammation is associated with corns. The heat in which may be diffused, if so, let me just read that again. Fever is diffused inflammation. Inflammation is associated with corns, the heat of which may be diffused, if so, the patient has a fever. He does talk a lot about corns. 1910, he talked about it quite a bit. All right, let's stop there. What do you guys get from that?
Well, he talks about health being what health, disease, and death. He separates the three and says what separates the three and what defines the three. Health being the condition of functions performed normally with a normal amount of force. Disease where there's something that interferes with it that doesn't allow the 100% function.
Yeah.
And death is where action has ceased to be controlled by intelligence. In other words, once the intelligence has left the living being, it becomes the same as the wood in your chair is related to the tree. It doesn't adapt. It can't deal with it anymore. And it's no longer, and then because immediately after that, he says that the act of dissolution or the act of a rolling stone is not the act of intelligence. In other words, a stone will roll down a hill, but it doesn't do it on its own.
Right.
Intelligence doesn't make it happen. So when you die and you're like the stone rolling down the hill. You're going to change. Your body's going to change after you die, but it ain't an intelligence in what's doing it, other than the intelligences that are acting on that body.
That's
from the outside in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The neuroskeleton, when in normal position, is a protector of the nervous system, but a nerve disturber when not properly placed. It's a subluxation.
Yeah.
I like that definition of a subluxation, quite honestly. It makes it's easier to say than, juxtaposition of the one above and one below, like B.J. Palmer, right? I'm gonna write this one down for myself.
He goes on to talk about more that the difference between an impingement and a pinch later on.
And he was talking, nerve tension was his big thing, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the tension on the nerve, not the pinching or the crimping like we're talking about, right? I'm gonna just mark this for myself, though. Forgive me here.
Yeah.
And defined right here.
Actually, but I'm sorry, because he talks about that in the next sentence. Actually, there you go.
Okay, and then here, the pressure. There are three kinds of pressure: impingement, pinch, and stricture. Two forms of injury. Is that contusion and concussion? Each are lesional. Yeah, mine has got a little typo in the middle of that. Pressure. You want to read some more? Why don't you go ahead, Alan?
Okay. Pressure on any portion of the nerve system, the encephalon, spinal cord, or ganglionic chains, ganglia or nerves, increases or impairs its carrying capacity of impulses, motor or sensory, causing too much or not enough functionating. Heat is one of these functions. To impinge is to press on one side. Impinging and impinge are verbs. They denote action, something to be done, are always followed by on, upon, or against. A nerve may be impinged on, upon, or against. Impingement is a noun, denotes an active condition of being impinged on, upon, or against. Pinching or squeezing is an act done by pressure on two sides, a material placed between two harder substances. Spinal adjustment displays two cuts on page 146 and 147. The former is designed to show the normal condition of the intervertebral discs. Do you know what book he's referring to here or in the next paragraph? Because he's talking, there's not 147 pages in my copy of this book.
Mine either.
So I don't know what he's referring to there.
Maybe 1910? I don't think so, though.
It could be. I didn't go back and look. The anatomy of a disc is a circular organ or body which is plate-like. The epiphyseal plates of bone are situated on the upper and under surfaces of the body of the vertebra, and the intervertebral fibrocartilage is known as discs because they are like a plate, flat and round. And here we go again. The cut on page 147 is showing compressed intervertebral discs and an impingement nerve from the narrowing of the foramina.
That's not in the first 100 pages of this. I mean, we know this book pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not this.
We cite 146, 147 in this, so yeah.
Yeah, that's not it's not in here, okay? So
okay. Yeah, I'm not sure where exactly that might be. The term foramina should be foramen, as a nerve is referred to in the singular number. To compress is to press or squeeze together or reduce in volume by pressure or to make more compact. The intervertebral cartilage is a connective tissue, non-vascular, contains no nerves. It is surrounded by the fibrovascular membrane in which blood vessels and nerves are freely distributed, by which it receives nutrition. It contains a fibrous element, its base being of chondrin, a viscous jelly-like substance which may be separated from the fibrous portion by boiling. I want to note, set aside for a second, that we understand now that there are nerves and vasculars feeding into the disc. This is 1910, and as we're talking, it's 2023, and that we understand that this was his knowledge at that time, and we've learned more since then, and that chondrin actually is still talked about today, and it is a real substance that surrounds the disc. So that's still valid, but I just want to annotate for people that may be listening now or in the future that we understand there's been some change in the understanding of anatomy over the century that's happened since this book came out.
Absolutely.
In the living subject, it may be destroyed, necrosed by excessive heat, talking about chondrin again. Inflammation of the surrounding membrane liquefies, liberates the gelatin, and very often destroys the fibrous portion. Its size is not and cannot be reduced by compression as shown in the cut. A displaced vertebra, one whose articular surfaces are separated, enlarges the foramen. Therefore, does not occlude the opening, does not pinch, compress, or squeeze the outgoing nerves as they pass through the intervertebral foramina. The spinal nerves and their branches may be impinged upon or against or stretched because of displaced vertebra, but not pinched. Impinged nerves from narrowing of the foramina, in quotes, the author here refers to nerves being pinched, not impinged. So he's slapping down stuff that other people are saying, and not defining who's saying it at this point, but he's saying, hey, I got a different definition than you do on this.
Yeah.
Constriction is the condition of being narrowed by a binding force applied around a tubular orifice. A morbid contraction of a passageway, any hollow tube or body. Constriction and stricture mean one and the same. Illustrate stricture on board, contracture of nerve tissue inflammation because of increased combustion of oxygen. I'm not clear on that sentence. Compression is to press together, to make more compact, to reduce in volume, to make narrower in one direction. Concussion is the shaking or jarring an agitation or a shock caused by a collision. So he's just gone through all the definitions of what we read in that earlier paragraph.
Yeah, pretty much.
The real and direct cause of disease is more or less nerve tension than normal. Let me read that sentence again. The real and direct cause of disease is more or less nerve tension than normal. Displaced bones, because of their pressure against or non-resistance of nerves, or that stretching cause an extra or lessened amount of tension. An abnormal performance of function of the body is denominated disease. The kind depends upon the tissue affected and the function disturbed. The subtle and nicely discriminating transmission of physiological impulses in health. The subtle and nicely discriminating transmission of physiological impulses is health, in health, whether of cells, the elementary structure of which organic substances are formed, individual organs, or body as an organism, is directed by an intelligence known as spirit. Keep going.
Well, that's the meat that I'm looking for right there.
The key to that is the subtle and nicely discriminating transmission of physiological impulses in health, is directed by an intelligence known as spirit.
Yeah.
Period.
Period. I mean, that's it.
The sensory nerves are those nerve fibers which carry sensory impulses from the exterior inward to a nerve center, resulting in sensation. Sensation is the recognizance of nerve vibration. Sensory nerve centers is where nerve vibration is identified. A sensory nerve is an afferent nerve, one which transmits peripheral impressions to the sensoria, sense centers, period. Sensory ganglia are those masses of nervous substance which are thought to serve as a center of nervous influence. The most prominent of the sensory nerves are those of the olfactory, optic, auditory, gustatory, tactile, and thermal. To these should be added the synesthesia, conscious existence, painful or pleasurable, depression or exaltation, the general sense of bodily or sense self-existence, the subconscious sensation by functioning of the internal organs. Sensory impressions are the effects of external agents or bodies upon the organs of sense. And I think that I have the next, from here down through the next two paragraphs or three, is totally highlighted and underlined several times.
This is what we're waiting for.
I wanted to annotate that before I start reading it. So like,
yeah, there you go.
Let's pay attention to this, right? These external agents or bodies are always the same. Impulses as originated are always perfect. If the nervous system is in a normal condition, the impressions, afferent impulses cannot be otherwise than normal.
Yeah,
we have the spiritual and physical impulses, those from the creator and the mind. All efferent impulses are motor. All motor impulses, whether of the spirit or the mind, are normal, providing the nerves of transmission are of normal tension. All thoughts, orders, commands, directions of the mind known as impulses are normal if voluntary. The lines of communication are normal. And here's the big one in my thought. I have as thoughts, orders, I have to get it in the light because I had different stuff there. All thoughts, orders, commands, directions of the spirit, a segment of the universal intelligence, contains in miniature all intelligence and quantities of the all-wise spirit, just as one drop of the ocean contains all the qualities of the briny deep.
I love that. I'm marking that. There's a post right there.
Thoughts, orders, commands, directions of the spirit, a segment of the universal intelligence. So the spirit that dwells in a living thing has all the knowledge of the universal intelligence, contains a miniature of all that intelligence and the qualities of the all-wise spirit. Innate within is a part of, but apart from, universal, like a drop is out of the ocean.
Now, if we taught that generally within the normal public in school, would people be a little different to each other, I think? I mean, I think this world would be slightly different. Even in chiropractic school.
That's why we're here as chiropractors.
That's exactly right. It's
part of our job. That's part of our purpose in being here and why we've been led to chiropractic, to help teach that.
Yeah.
To understand it and to teach it.
Yep.
Spread
absolutely.
that word.
Here's the foot. Hang on, I had to put it up on the table. All right. It's nice and black and blue. But, people asking me all day long, so how long do you have to keep it on? I said, well, as long as it takes until I determine we're taking it off. And it is, while innate and my spirit is healing me. And people are kind of like flabbergasted. You mean you're not seeing an orthopedist? And I said, if I see a problem arise, maybe I'll consult a specialist. But ultimately, my body's got to do it. And we just let it do its job. The more we interfere, the more we mess it up.
Yeah, people forget that when you sprain an ankle, which most people have done at some point or another, it swells up. And the purpose of the swelling is, one, to immobilize it, and two, because all the liquid, all that stuff has chemicals in it that when you move it, make it hurt.
Yeah.
So that you don't move it. And so what you've done is you've externally put something on to stabilize it so you don't move it and it doesn't hurt. But you're aware of the issue, and that's why you've done that. If otherwise your body would make you leave it alone.
Yeah. And what would the, other people do and say, well, then take these anti-inflammatories and take that, and your beautiful healing juice God created in you, the natural response of the body, just like D.D. Palmer said, is really for its preservation. Your body wants to preserve you. It has not forgotten me because I got a big boo-boo and made a big dumb mistake. I don't get punished like I won't be able to heal. The body is going to heal, and we give it the grace and the glory to do it, and the time to permit it to happen. So yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Alan.
You want me to go on?
Yeah, let's finish it. We only have 3 paragraphs.
No more discussion on that section then. Okay.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to discuss there, but he says that multiple times. All spiritual impulses. I love spiritual impulses because that's the first time I've read it. I've never read that anywhere else. Okay. Is spiritual impulse. What does that mean? And that's what I'm personally thinking I need to dig in a little bit more and understand of what a spiritual impulse is.
Well, he talks about things being transmitted across the ether,
Yeah.
and spiritual and physical impulses, and that from the creator and the mind. So what some is you, but it's allowing there to be other information and other source, and again, we have a piece of the creator within us, that innate intelligence, that all knowing. So the spirit, and which is what he talks about, the spirit in the body is that innate intelligence, and the mind is your conscious mind, I presume, which is partially controlled by that educated intelligence that we develop over time.
Right.
And so you have the impulses are perfect when they are sent out.
And the distinction between the spiritual, the spirit, the innate, and the soul, where he's making distinctions between them and how they are different. And even I'm just enamored with spiritual impulses, actually, but he does a good job at breaking it apart and giving us tidbits of understanding.
He's very good at creating this, very clear about his definitions and breaking things down all the way along, making it very clear.
Yeah. All right.
All spiritual impulses, those which cause intelligent organic action, life, and are perfect when originated. As much so as their creator as manifested in the newborn babe. So much as their creator as manifested in the newborn babe, which has not been injured, whose impulses are carried over nerves of normal tension. But if the tension frame is displaced, luxated ever so little, nerves stretched, vibration modified, innervation increased or decreased, we have conditions known as disease. So he's saying, that information is perfect when it's transmitted from the brain and from the creator and from spirit, as in a newborn babe that is uninjured. It doesn't mean that it can't be injured in the birth process, or I guess potentially before that.
Well, this is.
But as long as it's perfect, then and all the information is being transmitted, that it's going to be perfect transmission there.
And he's talking about forces of the outside. It's happening outside of us, and in the body, it's really an adaptability. Okay, normal tension frame. If the tension frame is displaced, why don't you finish that?
Luxated ever so little, nerves stretched, vibration modified, innervation is increased or decreased. we have conditions known as disease. The body, when diseased, manifests no new functions, develops no new forms of energy, adds no new space or accommodation. While the larger share of diseases, abnormal functioning, are because of trauma, toxins, and autosuggestion, there are minor causes such as inhalation of gas, smoke, or flame, lack of food, water, or air, decompression of the atmosphere in tunnels or caissons, an excess or a deficiency of heat, local exposure to the extremes of heat or cold, which induces necrosis, and exposure to X-rays may lead to caries. So here's the introduction of what later became the 3 T's: thoughts, toxins, and trauma. But as he clearly identifies it here, toxins, trauma, toxins, and autosuggestion, which may be somewhat different from thoughts.
Well, what people are, what we're programmed with, right? And, we know what he thought about autosuggestion in 1910. He talked about Carver all the time, but, and he wasn't for it. But really, a lot of the stress put on us from other people. This is from the people around us, right?
So he says, it's interesting here because he says there are minor causes. He talks about trauma, toxin, and autosuggestion, but then he talks about minor causes, which most of those that he lists there are what could be, considered toxins or trauma in some way. Exposure to smoke is gas and smoke and flame, or toxins, or trauma. Lack of
bad food. Sure.
So a lot of those things, but he seems to identify them separately, and that's the decompression of atmosphere in tunnels or caissons. Caissons are where they evacuate the air to build the water to build a bridge in the river.
You realize in this day they were vaccinating. They had, Pasquale, he was born 1911, and he received a vaccine at 3 years old that wounded him. That's what brought him to chiropractic. So, and I remember a quote in it was the 1906 book that Dede said it's not ready to be published, and BJ did it anyway. And he talks about X-ray, Vaxo, blah, 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 death producers. And I actually printed out a t-shirt with it. And a lot of that, this statement is really about this. He wasn't for X-ray, and BJ was doing X-ray at this time. And I think what he's referencing to a couple of times in here, without mentioning names, again, I think was BJ Palmer.
Yeah,
very likely. So. And adding in the X-ray in here when, BJ was really excited, and with good reason. A young man, first time, let's see what these X-rays can do. It's interesting. We have to know the history.
And we have to, and X-ray then in relation to X-ray today, and although X-ray is still toxic, the X-ray today is it's not the dosage they were using back then. And I'd studied ASBE with Ron Aragona, and we had some stuff that Kodak, we had special screens that Kodak was making that were high-speed screens, because I was taking a 14 film entry series of endpoint range of motion in 3 areas of the spine. But it was those screens had with those screens, they were telling us the dosage was the same as the regular series on normal screens. But so we learned over time to control the exposure, but it didn't make it less dangerous. It just, we were exposing at a less toxic level.
Yeah. Interesting. This whole evolution of things, really, it's interesting. Well, I love this, end of this chapter, and because, I like talking about the spiritual stuff. I'm bringing it into chiropractic. But
it's also some core principles right here.
Core principles of chiropractic.
Yeah,
exactly right. I wrote that down so I can have it for myself on a little envelope here. But really, of that definition of a subluxation, the neuroskeleton in normal position, it's a protector, but it can also be the disturber. I love that. It's just an interesting way to look at that. Yeah, he put a lot of really good fine points, refined them in chiropractic principles, philosophy, art, and science. Well, the next one is called inflammation. We're not gonna start that tonight. Not necessarily very. Oh, here, Dr. Gigi is getting on. She was just texting me a few moments ago. Here's Gigi. Hey,
Bob,
Gigi.
I thought I'd hear more from you tonight, brother.
What's that? Well,
you're muted Gigi, now, so
there we're in. Gigi, welcome to our podcast tonight. We're kind of wrapping up D.D. Palmer's 1914, but I'm glad to see you on here. It's been a long time.
Yes, for sure.
So, we're just talking about we're ending this chapter. We're in D.D. Palmer's 1914 book, and we're on page 24 and 25. Any other insights from you guys? Anything you'd like to share, Bob or Carol? Now you're well illuminated now, which is great. Well,
I love the light in your room, but Carol, it's coming down like rays from above.
Awesome. Well, we touched on a lot of chiropractic philosophy. We did a lot tonight, actually, and I'm excited about it. And I feel my leg is healing faster. All the prayers that we got today, which I think is fantastic, and I know it's healed. I'm just going to finish off by reading this again because it's poignant to me. The neuroskeleton, when in normal position, is a protector of the nervous system, but a nerve disturber when not properly placed. I love that. Page 22. So this is a time for my shameless plugs, and for our innate adjusting workshop, July 22nd in Spartanburg. We're also going to be in Haiti with innate missions. We're going with Peter Morgan, and that's at the end of September. We're going to be teaching innate adjusting and innate baby adjusting in the orphanage with Peter in Haiti, which I think is going to be spectacular. And it's right at my anniversary, so we're going to stay in the Dominican a little while afterwards, which is going to be fun. So everybody's invited, and we use my code. I think it's innate is what it is, or innate 23. I'll get the code, forgive me, but you get $150 off to do the mission. Okay. And that's for everybody. I could get it. I'll reconfirm that for you. Okay. For later. And then we are planning Japan in the near future. Summer 2024, we're going to be in Japan. And so we're in November, we're going to be at Palmer, Florida. So I think those are all my dates. I think I got them all out, and I hope to see you guys there. If anybody has questions, you can message me anytime. You'll probably hear a lot about it because they're going to post about it like crazy.
Where do you think you're going to be in Japan?
Tokyo.
In Tokyo?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. There are a lot of chiropractors there, and we just talked to them the other day, and they talked about it, bringing innate there, and so we'll do it.
I was fortunate enough to go to Japan with if you know jazz, Keith Jarrett, jazz pianist, took me to Japan as his chiropractor for 10 days.
Very
and I
cool.
we were in Nagoya and Kyoto and Tokyo. And oh man, if you can get to Kyoto, it was the only city that wasn't bombed in the war.
Yeah.
You got monasteries and Buddhist shrines there that are from the 1400s.
Absolutely.
So,
all right, everybody. Thanks
anyway,
for hearing that. You guys have a beautiful night. We are well spizzed for our service tomorrow, and I appreciate you guys, and I miss you.
Get well. Heal that ankle.
We do every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.
Love you guys.